So what are some important sections for your question? The chapter is quite big, but there are some particular sections from which questions have been repeated year after year. Now, one such section, let's go serially. I have given the page number also side by side, so it is easy for you to find it out. So on page 17 you have again the location. As I said, why is the location significant? The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheater formed by the Union buildings in Pretoria. For decades means again for quite a long amount of time, for more than 10 years, this had been the seat of white supremacy. So white supremacy, so the policy of apartheid which was carried out, it was centered around like a capital city, like for India you can say the Parliament of India. That is the seat of India's democracy, where Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, the joint sessions are held. Similarly, in South Africa, the Union buildings in Pretoria, the sandstone amphitheater formed with the Union buildings in Pretoria, was a seat where such decisions were taken. Nelson Mandela chose the very same place. Why? Because he wanted to show that the country is changing, the time has changed, and now the country is gearing up to work together. The whites and the blacks would work together for the future of the country. It was the site of a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. Now, why is it saying rainbow gathering? Rainbow means a collection of varied colors, various hues coming together. So in Pretoria, in the sandstone amphitheater, a rainbow gathering. When Nelson Mandela mentions this phrase, that means it is talking about people from different corners of the world. No matter their skin tone, no matter their names, their religion, their ethnicity, their culture, everyone was invited. So in the audience, everyone was equal, everyone had the same seat. So Nelson Mandela is saying it was a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations. Okay, rainbow gathering of nations. Today we know that the countries are divided into first world countries, third world countries. So there is a distinction. But Nelson Mandela says that in the sandstone amphitheater, every country, every dignitary, every representative is equal. Next, second point, we who were the outlaws not so long ago have today been given the rare privilege to be the host of nations of the world on our own soil. So Nelson Mandela is saying outlaws means criminal. We were initially considered to be criminals, but today we are the host. So from outlaws, we have now become the host. We thank all of our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country what is after all a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. So Nelson Mandela is thanking all the dignitaries. Why? Because they were earlier considered to be criminals, but now what they were fighting for, they have been proved true, they have been proved correct. So a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. So these are universal humanistic principles. So these are the universal humanistic principles which Nelson Mandela is talking about. So if you get a question like what are the universal themes that Nelson Mandela speaks about or talks about in his speech, the victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. These are the universal values. Next, on page 19, only moments before the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and Police, the chests bedecked means they were decorated with ribbons and medals from days gone by, days from the past, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. I was not unmindful of the fact. That means it did not go beyond my notice that not so many years ago before, they would not have saluted but have arrested me. So it is as if life has come a full circle for Nelson Mandela. The same people who would have earlier arrested him are now saluting him. Such is life. Next, Okay, the next section that we will discuss the important that are important is from page 20. That day had come through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people whose sufferings and courage can never be counted or repeated. So over here, Nelson Mandela is conveying his thanks. He is remembering the sacrifices made by the varied freedom fighters who gave their lives in their quest for attaining equality, for the quest for emancipation of the blacks in South Africa. And this line is very important. I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. So, simply the sum of all those people means that their sacrifice had ensured their values, the universal values of justice, of equality, of liberty, that those values would be established in society. And since I have emerged victorious in following their path in that society, so I have been enriched by their teaching. So I am because of them. That long and noble line ended. Long and noble line ended. That means that era of struggling for emancipation has ended, and now began again with me. A new era has begun. So that long and noble line ended with Nelson Mandela, and now a new era has begun with Nelson Mandela, an era of equality, of cooperation, of universal brotherhood. This is the significance of this section. Next, my country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. I've already explained this on slide 1. Next is, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. Now again, Nelson Mandela, this shows the, you can say, his kindness, his thought process, how he does not blame a person. He refuses to blame a section of people just because of their skin color. He has been tormented for over 30 years. He has been in prison because of the policy of apartheid, but he refuses to put the blame solely because of the color of skin. He says that no one is born hating another person. If today there is a racist who wants to put me behind bars, it is he has not been born like that. Neither am I going to blame his background. That means he's giving respect to his upbringing, he's giving respect to his country of origin or his religion. So he is being very respectful towards his oppressor as well. He says people must learn to hate. So hate is taught, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. That means that everyone who has gone on the wrong path, we can teach them, we can help them come back to the path of love and universal brotherhood. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. So this was on page 21. Next, in life, every man has twin obligations. Okay, this section is also very important from the point of view of your exam. Every man has twin obligations. Obligations to his family, to his parents, to his wife and children. So this is the first obligation, that is his familial obligation, F-A-M-I-L-I-A-L. So every person has familial obligation, and other than that, he has an obligation to his people, his community, his country. That means a societal obligation, SOCIETAL. So every person has a familial obligation, every person has a societal obligation. But in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both of those obligations. So why Nelson Mandela is saying that it was impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both of those obligations, because if my duty towards my family ensures that I have to give them a life filled with happiness, freedom, to help them grow to be their best selves. But in a country like South Africa where there is apartheid, I have to teach my children not to go into white dominated clubs or swimming pools or roads or buses. So I feel as a person in my obligation, in my duty towards my family. So if I am a person of skin color, I will fail in my familial obligation. So, what do I need to do? Then I have to rather focus on my community and my country. Why? Because only when a man is able to fulfill his obligation to his people, only then he will be able to fulfill his obligation to his family. Next, uh, it was this desire for the freedom of my people. So he's now talking about the societal obligation. It was this desire for the freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity and self respect that animated my life. So, with dignity, with self respect. That transformed a frightened young man. So, this is the significance of this section. How or what contributed to Nelson Mandela becoming a freedom fighter or a person who wanted to repeal the apartheid regime? What was going on in Nelson Mandela's mind that made him decide to fight to repeal the apartheid regime? This is the answer. It drove a frightened young man into a bold one. So he got courage. He got courage with his resolution. A law-abiding attorney. So he was a very educated person. But what later happened? He had to become a criminal and he spent 30 years behind jail. He turned a family-loving husband into a man without a home. Why? Why did he become a man without a home? Did he want to abandon his family? Absolutely not. He was married, he had a family, but when he wanted to fight for equality, when he wanted basic dignity, self-respect to be given, he had to talk about it with higher authorities. He immediately became an outlaw, and when you become an outlaw you are on the run, and when you are on the run you are a criminal. So it forced a life loving man, a person who loved living life, to live like a monk. Monk over here means that he had to start making sacrifices. A person who loved living his life, all that life had to offer, enjoying life to its fullest, he now had to become a person who had to start making sacrifices for the greater good, for the higher good. And next, I knew that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. Now, this is the moral of the story, that Nelson Mandela is rising above the apartheid regime. He's rising above racial segregation, discrimination, the feelings of hatred, isolation, revenge. He is rising above it. He is saying that we are the oppressed, and our aim initially was to free the oppressed, but in doing so, I have realized that the oppressor is also behind bars. He is a prisoner of his own hatred. He is locked behind his prejudice and his narrow mindedness. So, the task is now all the more important. Now, remember, children, he is giving the speech during the inauguration when he has already been elected as the first black president of South Africa. So that means he's outlining the path ahead. He's saying that what we have achieved till now was only the past. We cannot take it as a victory and sit back at home. We have to now open the windows and ensure prejudice and narrow-mindedness is cleared from the society, the minds of society. I'm not truly free if I'm taking away someone else's freedom. Why? Because in my freedom, I'm not thinking about my enjoyment or my emancipation. If I'm taking away someone else's freedom, my thoughts are consumed with how to oppress him. So I am equally in the jail. If you fail to understand this reference, children, imagine a jailer. All right, there are prisoners and there is a jailer. Now, in a prison, we know that prisoners are kept in cells. But what about the jailer? What about those policemen? They also have to stay in the jail. So it's not only the criminals, the prisoners who are staying in a jail, the policemen, the jailer, everyone who works over there, who are upholding the system, institutionalized reform, the system, they also have to stay in a jail. They spend most of their day, if not have permanent housing quarters within the system of a jail. So it is not only the oppressor, not only the criminals, it is so-called criminals in the eyes of the law, but it is also the person who are keeping them there, who are also putting themselves in that jail. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. So he's talking about the vicious cycle that exists. When one in this narrow mindedness wants to take away another person's rights, then the oppressed, the victim, is definitely, he's angry, he is thinking of as thoughts of revenge, but then the oppressor is also thinking about how to subdue him. So the cycle goes on, the cycle never ends. Nelson wants South Africa to prosper with freedom and equality. So that brings us to the end of this chapter. Please go through the chapter, and if you want me to do a second lesson on Nelson Mandela, please leave your comments in the chat section below. Thank you. Have a wonderful day ahead, and please revise.